My name's Addie Smith.
My name's Katie Feldman.
My name's Lily Whale.
I'm Ava Hurlbutt.
Welcome to Spiked Up!
Hey there, Colorado track and field fans. Welcome to this week's edition of Spiked Up. As always, I'm Bobby Reyes, and I'm going to be your host. Now, this week's podcast is brought to you by 303 Running, locally owned and locally grown, just like this podcast. All right, so I know snow torpedoed quite a handful of meets this week, but some meets did get off the starting line, so we still have plenty to talk about. So let's dive in onto a few things that really caught my eye this week. All right, we're going to start at the Centaurus Twilight because whoa, now I want to Jade West, 47.4 in the shot put. This leads the state by 7 feet right now. I know when you get this good, inches and feet are hard to come by, but I feel like we need to take a look at that state record. It's owned by Colonist Newsom, 51.1, set in 1994. That's a pretty old record. And as I mentioned, I know 4 feet it's going to be hard to come by, but right now Jade is getting closer to this than anyone has in recent history. So we're definitely going to want to keep an eye on that girl's shot put heading into the final 4 weeks of the season. Looking at the track, Cherokee Trails, Kaylee Poe, 14:32 in 100 hurdles. That's a personal best, and it's only the second time she's run the event this season. So that's kind of frightening because that means, she gets a few more reps under a few more times on the track, and that time's going to come down, which is perfect heading into May. All right, going all the way to the western slope, Wild West, Central Grand Junction stage. I apologize, I'm going to say her last name wrong. Zagrist, 2:14.19, 800. That's a season best. But what's impressive about this performance is the fact that it's a solo effort. She won this race by 13 seconds. An 800 by 13 seconds. That moves her up to number 4 in 4A right now. And which, if we want to look at the 4A landscape just really quickly, 4 ladies have run between 2:12 and 2:14, which tells us that we've got a race on tap here coming at Jeffco Stadium. That's going to be a wild one to watch. All right, let's move on to perhaps the biggest meet of the week that actually got off the starting line, the Randall Hess Rough Rider. There were plenty of performances that came out of this meet. But I'm just going to highlight a handful because, again, there's a lot going on here. Starting off with the Windsor Girls 4x2, state leading 138.68 to win the event. Obviously, kind of they're catching their stride right in time as we head into May. Going way up in distance, Mia Williams in a great 1,600 meters. She ran a 4:57, which was 2 seconds in front of Delaney Ruder, who ran a 4:59. 2 more sub-5 clockings. Again, these numbers are going to start stacking up as we get closer to the state meet. And now, oh my gosh, okay, the boys' mile. Perhaps the deepest race of the season for this event. 5 under 420. Did not hear me wrong when I said that. 5 under 420. Led by Fort Collins Jr., Cadale Ruthven. Tight win here, 4:14.42. Keep in mind that 0.42. Thompson Valley's Curtis Smila was 4:14.44, so that's 200ths of a second to win this one. The most competitive 1,600 run this season. These are the top 2 times run in Colorado. And okay, so diving in a little bit more on Cadell here. What's frightening about this stat is last year he hovered more in the mid 420s, and then he ran 4:20 the week before the state meet. That got him into the state meet. At the time, that was a big PR. And then at the state meet, he chops off 5 seconds and runs 4:15. At the state meet, 5 seconds. Big PR. So the reason why I'm bringing that stat up is the fact that last year he had a very sharp curve up leading into the state meet, and then kind of boom, 5 seconds in the mile at the state meet. That's a lot for this event. So how much more time does he take off between now and then? Because he's already popped a 4:14, a low 4:14 at that. If anything looks like if it looks like what he did last year at the state meet, we could see another massive improvement, and perhaps is a sub 410 clocking on tap here. There's quite a few guys that can do this. So incredible meet going on at Randall Hess, Rough Rider. Those were a handful that really stood out, and obviously there was a few more, but we're going to wrap it here for now. All right, let's talk about the boys 3,200 meter because right now we're on track to have one of the deepest years in history, and not even just deep depth here, but we're talking about this could potentially be a record-breaking year on the front end in terms of potential state records. Obviously, there's quite a few athletes who are eyeballing that, so let's talk about quantity and quality right now. The list currently, and this is because a lot of meets did not get off the starting line on Saturday morning. So the list currently, we've got 9 under 920 and 3 under 903. Those 3 are Mountain Vista teammates Benji Anderson and Benjamin Adams, and Sean Mountain's Brogan Collins. Comparing to last year, because last year was an incredibly deep year as well, 15 broke 920, but 13 of those 15 came at the state meet itself. Of the 15, 2 broke 902. That was the Battle Mountain duo of Will Brunner and Porter Midall. Both of those performances also came at the state meet. So for comparing to last year, obviously last year looks faster, but that was with 4 more weeks of the season, which we still have in front of us. So the question I want to pose is, how many more break 920 this year? And when we're looking at the stats here, I feel like there can be quite a few more. That's first and foremost. And secondly, I feel like I'm going to go ahead and predict that this will be the deepest year in Colorado history for the boys 3,200 meter, because we have quite a few athletes who've not even run the 3,200 meter yet. Starting with Sean Mountain's Aiden LaRue, he was scheduled to open up this weekend, but obviously snow, crazy weather always plays a factor. But several months ago, he ran 4:15 in the 5,000. At that pace, he split around 9:10 for 2 miles. So I'm going to say unofficially, that takes us to 10 under 920. Even though he hasn't run a 3,200 meter just yet, I feel like that's kind of a shoe-in where he should be one of those guys who's already going to be able to dip down to that. It just depends on when he gets to get on the starting line. We've also got Coronado Xavier Campos, 4:19 last week in the 1,600. He's still on his comeback trail, so he's another athlete I really feel like who can definitely dip under the mark. Niwat's Cole Mazarino, 4:18 in the 16, 9:30 in the 3,200 meters so far, but I really feel like that 4:19 suggests a much faster 32. Anybody who's run the 32 knows 8 laps, a lot can happen. A lot of times you need weather to cooperate, the pace needs to cooperate. So, I really feel like Cole's another one of those guys who, once everything hits right, he'll definitely be under the 920 mark. We've got Niwat's Rocco Culpepper, who if he decides to run the 3,200 meter, decides to give it a try, definitely a guy who can break 920, even though I know he's more of an 8:16 guy. But if he decides to run a 3,200 meter in the next 4 weeks, I would count on him breaking 920 as well. And then we've got Pine Creek's Gabriel and Valor's Porter Warren. Both have run 920 on the nose so far. So right there, I just named 6 guys. So if we just hypothetically say those 6 break 920 in the next 4 weeks, that puts us at 15, which is exactly where we were last year. And that's not to count how many other guys who were right on the cusp. Like I could keep on naming off guys. There's a handful more who've even gone under 930. Again, once everything clicks, I feel like a handful more guys are going to go into that 920 mark. But what's impressive to me right now is so we've already got 9, and we've got potentially up to 6 who are potentially up to 15, excuse me. And we're not even in May yet. Obviously, some of the fastest running comes in the last 2 to 3 weeks where everyone's trying to get that state qualifier mark. And then the state meet itself, which traditionally speaking has provided some great weather. So maybe me saying that, we should all knock on wood that holds. But what I'm getting at here is that we're looking at potentially a historic year in the boys 3,200 meter. We've got 4 more weeks to figure out not only does Parker Wolf's state record stand, but how many guys are going to break 920. So we've got a lot of questions in front of us in 4 weeks to answer them. All right, now we're going to move on to this week's segment of Bobby on the Hot Seat. Got a handful of questions here coming off of Instagram. For those of you who did respond, thank you so much. I'm just going to read my top 3 for this week. Starting with Cobain or Vetter, that's Kurt Cobain or Eddie Vedder. That's a really hard one to pick. I feel like it kind of depends on the day of the week for me, but I'd say more often than not, probably going to be an Eddie Vedder fan over Kurt, even though I still love Nirvana just as much. Second question here. Why am I rolled? Hey man, only you can answer that question. And my favorite question this week was, what's your favorite moment covering Colorado high school track and field and cross country? And I'm going to tell a story in this one because that's a great question. I have plenty of moments that I really feel are highlights in my head, but there's one that really sticks out the most, and that is the 2021 5A 1600 Harrison Witt versus Parker Wolf. That resulted in a state record of a 4:04 clocking for Harrison. But the reason why I feel like this one stands out to me, not only was it absolutely wild to see a 4:04 clocking here in Colorado at altitude, but it was the lead up. Anyone who remembers that season, it started in early May and went to the late June, and it was insanely fast. Probably due to the fact that there was no seat. Athletes had gone, pretty much in the middle of October to the middle of or early May before even competing. But that season saw every distance state record on the boys' side fall. The boys 800, the boys mile, and the boys 32. And I remember it was early in the season when I filmed Parker running a sub-9 clocking, and I believe it was an 8:55 state record at the time in the 32. And the same exact day, Harrison was up north running, I believe, right around a 4:06, breaking the 1600 meter state record. Fast forward a week or two, Parker breaks Harrison's state record in the 1600. A few weeks later, Harrison runs a 1:48.5 to break the 800 meter state record. So heading into the state meet, we had the 800, the 16, and the 3200 meters state records all fall in the span of about 5 weeks. And you have Parker versus Harrison here, meeting in the mile. On Friday, we've got Parker runs away with the state title in 32. Harrison runs the second fastest 800 meter ever in the state, running a 1:48.7, I believe. And then so you have the meeting in the middle on Saturday, the third day at Jeffco Stadium. Anyone who's been there knows that day is wild because there are state champions getting crowned left and right. And I specifically remember watching this race and thinking that Parker ran it the only way he could possibly run it, which when you're a strength runner like he is versus someone with a lot of leg speed like Harrison, there's one way to race, and that's from the front. And Parker set this insanely hot pace. If anything, he deserves a lot of credit for making that race. I remember him basically leading the entire time until about 450 meters to go, comes out into lane 2 a little bit, almost as if to let Harrison go by, whether he did or not on purpose. I guess that can be a question asked him, but I just remember seeing Harrison go to the arms with 450 meters to go and just tore away the final lap, torching a 4:04. The crowd's going nuts. I know there's Vista Nation's right up on the rail there, going wild. For me, watching that happen, I just remember having to sit down and just kind of take a breath because it was perhaps just one of the greatest races I think I've seen covering high school track and field. So yes, definitely that. And there's plenty more, but that one stands out the most in my mind right now. All right, that about wraps up this week's edition of Spiked Up. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you can keep up with all things going on Colorado track and field as we head into the final few weeks of the season. As always, I'll see you on the track.
Doing it all for you, my Lewis. I'm just getting started. Doing it all for you, my Lewis. So I show you spark. Doing it all for you, my Lewis. I'm just getting started. Doing it all for you, my Lewis. So I show you spark. Doing it all for you, my Lewis.
As always, I'm Bobby Reyes, and I'm going to be your host. This week's... I can't talk.